A new study of military veterans who suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder has found that acupuncture can help. It's only a small study of 21 veterans, but Healthwatch Norfolk says the results are extremely impressive.
All of the veterans reported a big improvement in their condition following 6 weeks of treatment. It's hoped the project will lead to more research. We'll hear from the man who led the study in a moment, but first this from Mike Liggins.
You can start talking to me. Come on. And you, Queenie. Come on, darlings.
Darren Edwards at his holiday caravan on the Norfolk coast with his birds and his pug puppy called Simba. Darren was in the army for 24 years. He served in Northern Ireland, in both Gulf Wars and in Afghanistan. For many years, he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
Huge nightmares where you really don't want to go to sleep. And what they call daymares as well, where you get a smell of something or a certain sound will take you straight back.
Darren would drink himself to sleep up to 7 bottles of wine a night. 2 years ago, he decided he couldn't go on.
I dropped a load of pills in my mouth, swallowed them, and that was me. I was ready to go.
One incident in Northern Ireland messed with his head more than any other.
Yeah, we were out on patrol on what they call top cover, where you're sticking out the top of a Land Rover. Next thing we know, we're being shot at. 52 rounds, they counted. And we couldn't fire back. CO's policy at the time was, you can't see the whites of their eyes, do not engage.
After the suicide attempt, Darren heard about Norwich-based acupuncturist Naji Malik, and he went to visit.
When you put the 7 needles, somehow they work together to lift that heavy trauma out. It literally gets lifted out.
He never asked me any questions. He just looked at me and went, come on, I can help you.
Why do you need to ask them how they are? It's already so obvious.
Felt like the world had just been lifted off my shoulders.
Don't talk to them. If they choose to come and talk, then by all means we talk. We have nothing against talking. But if somebody is in such a bad way, they don't want to talk.
Darren is one of a small group, just 26, who all had acupuncture and were studied by Healthwatch Norfolk for a year. All of them improved significantly. Darren is doing really well now. His words, I have my pride back and my dignity. Mike Liggins, BBC Look East, Norfolk.
Well, that research was led by Ed Fraser from Norfolk Healthwatch. He told me that previous studies had seen positive results, but he was still surprised by the level of success in this project.
These results are quite remarkable when you compare them to other studies. We had 100% of the participants had what's called a clinically significant improvement, which basically means that the change in their symptoms was so large that it has real-world kind of clinical effects. So that is a remarkable outcome. So we weren't expecting to see that level of success.
But we have to say that it was a very small sample, not that many cases, and one acupuncturist. So how much can we actually learn from this research?
It's important to be careful when you're generalising findings from a small study. The problem with the single acupuncturist is a really interesting one. Because there was only one provider, it's difficult for us to be sure whether the positive effects that we saw were to do with the needles being stuck in, the actual acupuncture, or was it something to do with the way that acupuncture was provided. Naji, the acupuncturist, for example, has a lot of experience treating veterans. Perhaps his experience and his personal qualities came into play, and that's why the therapy was seen to be really positive. So it's difficult to tell whether it's to do with acupuncture, whether it's to do with the acupuncturist, or both.
I found it very interesting what Darren said about the fact that he didn't have to talk, because a lot of therapies that are provided are about talking about things. In the case of PTSD, it may be that that actually doesn't help.
Yeah, there's currently an ongoing debate about that. Trauma-focused therapy is how we treat PTSD in this country, and that basically involves directly addressing the cause of the traumatic experience through talking about it. And there is some concern that actually that focus on the traumatic experience might actually be damaging. It might be one of the reasons why people don't stick with therapy. There's a particularly high dropout rate with veterans, and there's some research that kind of suggests that maybe military trauma is so intense and so unique that actually therapies that focus on that might not be effective.
We don't want to get people's hopes up, because it's a long way off this becoming kind of NHS-funded treatment.
Yeah, I think there were several limitations with this study. However, what I would say is the effects were so positive that I think this definitely does justify future research. As to whether it would be commissioned by the NHS, I think we're a fair way away from that, but I think these are really encouraging findings. It might well be that acupuncture is a really useful therapy for some individuals who don't perhaps like talking about their thoughts or feelings.
Ed Fraser, thank you very much.
Thank you.